Hey guys, Tarke here in my apparently fractured green screen t-shirt, and I've collected my synthesis mechanic feedback thing. Having played the league for a while now, from my video yesterday I got a lot of heat for but Tarke, how do you give feedback? This is kind of my thoughts on the league. So I've broken stuff down into groups. So there are core mechanics, and these are the core mechanics and the way they're designed, how they can lead to certain problems. Then the reward structure, then quality of life stuff. This is stuff which can be changed, which wouldn't break the league. Whereas the core design stuff, it's been designed in a certain way. And then I've separated stuff which need addressing, but are bugs. So these are things that can be changed. These things that will be changed. These are things that can be changed. These are results of the current reward structure. And these are results of the current fundamental design of the league. So starting off with, it's important to separate synthesis into two things. So with synthesis, you have the memory nexus, and then you have the memory fragments which spawn in maps, much like incursions. So they're two fundamentally different mechanics, and they need to kind of be seen as such. But talking about the memory map, they have 0 disconnect protection, and by that also 0 fail state protection. So to give you an example of what I mean by that, I was trying to get to this memory modifier, which would chain all the way back through here, and boost all of these nodes. These nodes here I've been collecting mods on, and I've been running down here collecting buffs. Now these all had 2 uses on them, and I got to this zone, and then I disconnected, which meaning these will only have 1 use left. Which means that I would now have to replace these 3 to get this buff for it to carry back along. Because these had 2 uses before, I was able to run all the way through here, tag this memory modifier, the paths behind me would have all consisted, and it would have proliferated cleanly. It's very frustrating designing mechanics which punish fail states and disconnects so horribly. And there's not really anything they can do about that, and that's just a fundamental issue with any league design, which just hard punishes you like that. We saw a similar thing with Delve to a much, much lesser extent. What I mean by that is the actual Azerite investment cost. So when you had a really deep Delve, it's not so bad now since they've capped out the sulfite costs. But with the old sulfite costs, it used to be really punishing when you've spent all of your juice for a really long node, and then you disconnect or crash right before the end, and you've wasted this resource that you've gathered. It's the same kind of thing, but times 11. And that's just, a symptom of the core design. So that's one thing which is pretty frustrating. Another thing, this will be something that some people will love, some people will hate, but it rewards high investment and upkeep far more than average use. So it's one of those things where, and I think this is where a lot of the complaints are coming from, you get people who are part of the casual crowd, and they're saying, oh, well, this is a terrible mechanic for me because I will never have the time or the investment to fully go crazy with it as much as other people would, and therefore I cannot get the most out of the system. That's just by design. So if you think that's a good or a bad thing, it's just a consequence of the system. The tier 1 synthesized items are highly dependent on other features. So what I mean by that is, if you bring up PoEDB, and I'll leave a link to this down below, they've actually collected all of the mods, and these are all mods. So these are all the different things that you can get as implicits. So for example, I really want Arcane Surge for my build, so you just, Control F Arcane Surge, and go through all of them. So to get 6% increased intelligence, gain Arcane Surge on hit with spells, you need to have intelligence on all 3 of the fractured items you sacrifice to the device, and they would have to have 161 up to 200 int. So if I sacrificed 3 fractured rings, which had over 161 intelligence, there's a chance that I could get this as the implicit. Now, the reason why I say that this is very dependent on other systems, some of these mods you can only get through either Essence or Unveiled modifiers, or if you have all your Unveiled mods unlocked, it's much easier to target farm certain things and craft certain things. So to really get the most out of Synthesis, you need to be very, very progressed in other systems. But considering how little access we have to target farming stuff like Jun, it's actually incredibly difficult. So even if you really want to engage with the system, you can't. And this is something I'll get onto later, and talks about using fossils and essences on fractured items. So again, it's one of those things where to get the most out of the system, even if you want to, you can be gated just by pure RNG, and that doesn't feel that great. By design, it also punishes slow builds. So with the way that the decays work, and the fact that they're effectively timed doing the memory frags inside maps, if you're a build using no movement skills, or you're playing a very slow build, or let's say you're playing like a combo build, like, I don't know, a corpse generating volatile dead build, but not using any Poet's Pen cheese, you're at a big disadvantage to a build which has full Flame Dash cooldown investment, and just, you know, taps and homes abilities everywhere. So again, it punishes a certain kind of player far more so than others. It also, on that note, it kind of soft forces teleporting movement skills. Because of Flame Dash, I can jump over Decay. So if this is the path, 1, 2, 3, 4, and Decay completely took over this area here, I can Flame Dash over it and still progress. Whereas if I was a Shield Charge build or a Whirling Blades build, that would not be possible at all. So again, by pure design of the League mechanic, it will punish some people just based on a playstyle, and that doesn't feel that great. Now, when you're planning out routes, these rewards can spawn randomly, which can sometimes block your path. That's been done on purpose, because if you had full control of everything you planned out, you would have a system where very intelligent players would basically sextant block. Sextant blocking was a massive issue when it was fully rampant, incredibly difficult to explain, very hard to balance around, and kind of fundamentally by design, they had to have it so that you could be randomly interrupted. If they were like, okay, we'll let people sextant block, then you need to completely rebalance the entire reward structure around the most fringe abuse cases, which then means that it'll be even more rewarding for the very small percentage of players, and then even less rewarding for the vast majority of players, which is obviously a bad thing. Finally, on like the core mechanic side of things, it very much rewards like stacking a bunch of items. So I've been hoarding items for synthesized crafting, and I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 normal tabs, and then 1 quad tab, and I'm not even like collecting two-handed maces. I'm not collecting everything, but I'm collecting a lot. So if you're a free-to-play player or someone on limited stash tabs, then obviously that's a pretty big deal. And also if you're the kind of player who likes to go full zoom, only pick up like the most efficient currency, you're then kind of locking yourself out of content. So again, it punishes certain playstyles. Now, getting into the reward structure side of things, and this is where I feel like the League actually really works, but I'll kind of talk about why it has a slight disconnect possibly. So for the reward structure side of things, memory fragments in maps are basically XP and loot with 0 investment. You're running a map. Every single map that you run will have the memory fragment zones in them, which are like super incursions. So even if you don't enjoy the memory nexus thing at all, you're guaranteed a whole bunch of extra loot there. So that's absolutely amazing. And that's a way that even if you don't like this side of things, you still get rewarded for the League, and it's engaging. It's like you can engage with from level 1 all the way through to level 100. And I think that's a very good system. But I think because of that, there's some like disconnect between the League and then the items. Because the League are these like extra zones which give you a bunch of XP and loot. The fractured items and the synthesized items are like extra stuff on top. So there's actually a lot of reward there, even if you don't engage with the synthesized stuff. But I don't know if people are like... Obviously, they realize they're getting way more XP and way more loot, but I just don't know if that's registering in their head, because they weren't sold... With Breach League, most people just enjoyed Breach for the mobs, not for the Breach Lords. I think it's kind of the same thing. I don't know. The Memory Nexus offers a temple/delve-like experience, which again, it gives XP and loot with 0 investment. You don't need to spend any currency. The only investment is time. Time is obviously a resource, So, you know, you need to balance, is this worth my time over than just running more maps? But this is actually a very good system when it came to progressing Atlas, because these can drop maps. You can get maps from this. So it was actually very helpful for me, league starting, because, you know, I got like a day 3 Shaper in a small private league economy. I didn't buy any maps with other players. That was purely just from being lucky, running all the side zones, getting as many extra drops as possible, and it felt good. Between this, Delve, and Incursion, it's very easy to build a map base without having to buy maps, and that, I think, is great in my opinion. But again, that's separate from the whole synthesized fractured items thing. So, you can get up to 3 implicit items. It's obviously going to be very rare, but one of the challenges is literally with up to 3 implicits. So all of these crazy implicits that people are starting to post on Reddit as they understand the system, imagine how crazy it's going to be when you add it all together. You can make very powerful items to compete with Elder and Shaper rares, but obviously, again, that's for the people who do the insane crafters. Now, let's kind of get into the quality of life side of things. Also, one thing that I forgot to mention on that, since synthesized items are highly dependent on other features, it reminds me a lot of the old level 7 mastercrafts. So most people wouldn't level their masters to 7 because it felt like too much of a grind, and they're like, oh, if I want a level 7 craft, I'll just buy it from another player. And I feel like synthesis is kind of similar in that sense, where I think a lot of people won't bother with the system, and if they want like Onslaught boots or Arcane Surge on hit rings or Onslaught on hit rings, they'll just buy it from someone else. Again, it's great if you're that player, but bad if you're someone who doesn't do that level of investment or you play on a minimal schedule or whatever. So, quality of life things. These are things which can all be improved without breaking the system at all. Not being able to see loot on final zones and stabilize a unit frame blocking. This is the one which irritates me the most. So these stabilizers here, when you're in the final zone, their name tag is massive. So when you have like a decayed path with like one use, like this for example, the entire zone sucks in and you just have this small area at the start free here. This is also exaggerated by other bugs, which mean you can't portal in and out easily. So suddenly you have to manage your entire inventory, pick up everything with only this much space, and because of how much loot drops in Path of Exile, if too many items are on the floor, you can't actually then drop things from your inventory, and it's really frustrating trying to click all the good stuff without running into the decay and teleporting yourself backwards, and being able to like see through the stabilizers. It's just very frustrating. We also have the, when you press tab, you get a list of mods which block the entire screen, but they are working on a fix for that, so that's a very nice quality of life improvement which will be coming. Right, getting back into it. The UI could do with work. The UI itself could definitely do with improving. We saw the same thing with Delve. The main thing for me from the UI which really stands out, which could definitely do with improving, is boss highlighting. So this is a boss node here, and just at a glance, it doesn't really seem that different at all. The only thing is it's got like this statue thing going on in the middle. I think it would be much better if there was a highlighting like icon, and like if this had a glow around it. So if this had a massive glow, then you open this, you instantly see it and go, oh, that's what I want. Or a beam or something. I just feel like the way they actually highlight the things could be better. Also on that note, the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you can see it quite clearly, but it's a bit fiddly, and if you're tired and you're looking at it at a glance, I think the 1 uses would be better if they were kind of red. Like the actual zone had like a red mist on it, so you could very easily see just from glancing what's decaying and what's not decaying. And any small quality of life stuff like that would be big. By also having more like color blocked, obvious systems on here to highlight certain things, I think it'll be a lot more intuitive when something spawns blocking your path. When something first spawned blocking my path, I assumed the system was broken. It took me ages to realize what exactly had happened. And that's just because the actual like UI is their like first iteration, in my opinion. Right. So, next up, inconsistent decay speeds. Inconsistent decay speeds is horrible. It's something they said they want to fix, but sometimes you just have a certain zone, you step out, and instantly the decay just completely wipes the zone. Goes back to what I said at the start about having no like DC protection or fail protection. When you're doing a very long path and you just rip a zone, to what feels like the game screwing you over. It's one thing if you rip a zone because you felt like you failed. That's good. But if the zone rips because the zone cheated you, or it feels like you were cheated, that feels bad. Feeling cheated as a player never feels bad. So anything they could do to make the decay feel better would be great. So kind of like how Incursion, you have a very clear timer. You're always 100% aware of how much you've got left. I like how manic the decay feels. Like you're always like on the edge of your seat, like, will I make it, will I make it, will I make it? But some people obviously hate that, and again, you do feel cheated sometimes. So hopefully that could be improved at some point. Right. Next up, 50-50 forked pathing. This is a big one. This is a big one for me. So I did this amazing little diagram in Paint, and this is the biggest like quality of life thing which needs addressing in my opinion. So if this is the starting node, and these are the 3 connectors, and also if you didn't know, all of the zones are in a grid like this, so you can always roughly tell where you need to go, because it'll always be here, here, or here. The question is, how do you get to it? So this is a fairly common layout you'll see. There'll be a big block of decay, or the actual layout of the zone will stop you just running straight through the middle, and you want to get to here. You know, this is where I want to get to. You can't run straight up. So you have to choose, do I go left or do I go right? If you make the wrong call and it's a 50-50, and this happens way too much, you decide to come up this way, so you commit to this path, and then the decay completely blobs off this zone, and then you're screwed. You have no way of getting back around here in time to get to the exit, and again you feel cheated, and being cheated never feels good. I don't know how they could fix this, without addressing like the core like spawning of maps, but always having some kind of path back would be nice, because again, with the way this system works, you want to fully invest in these really long paths. If you get screwed over like 10 paths deep, it bricks your run. You then have only 1 use remaining on all your previous things, and it completely screws you, and it's just 50-50, and it feels bad. If it's always going to be like that, it would kind of suck. So kind of like how, you know how in Delve you have flares? Maybe having flares would be too broken in this kind of system, but having some way that you could run back through or something would be cool. I don't know. The 10 memory fragment inventory cap. Some people hate it, some people like it. The reason why we have an inventory cap of 10, well, maybe not 10 specifically, but the reason why we have a cap on the amount of fragments we can have, GGG keeps designing leagues in a way that it's like, hey, we want you to engage with our mechanic on a timer. Everything they do is on a timer. So you look at Incursion, you run 11 incursions, then you do a temple. You look at Delve, you collect your sulfite, you hit your sulfite cap, you then do it. Same with Jun. Hey, I want to run safe houses, but my stuff's capped out, I have to do the safe house now. They're trying to design leagues in a way where it's like you map for X many hours, something spawns, you complete a bar, you then run that bar, you get a reward. So it's a design thing, but maybe increasing the cap of 10 would feel slightly better. But when you think about it in the scheme of things, the base idea is every 10 maps in the best case scenario, because again, you can fail memory fragments in maps, so it could be a bit longer, or you could skip them if they're like a bad layout. Sometimes people skip like the corner ones, or they only go for the 3 or the 4 piece ones. But roughly every 10 to 15 or so maps, they want you to run the Memory Nexus. Personally, I'm fine with that. I enjoy that. Some people don't, but it's a quality of life thing that's like they could kind of look at. So, getting into the bugs. These are things which will be fixed eventually, but again, it's something where just because there are bugs doesn't mean the rest of the league doesn't work, if that makes sense. The bugs can break the league, but it's not the league's issue, it's the bug. Every single league has bugs. And this is where I get frustrated with a lot of the super negative feedback we're getting, because I personally really like the league. It does have its flaws, but every single league has been flawed. Every league we like now was trash at release. Breach one of the best leagues ever made, Breach on launch was unplayable. Like, it was tragic. Harby is super fun now. What was Harby called during the league? Garbinger. People really like Einhar now. People hated Bestiary at launch. Delve. Everyone loves Delve. Delve at launch felt really bad with the old Flare targeting, the old Sulfite, the old Azerite progression. Every league works like this, guys. You just need to, like, bear with it a bit. But going into the bugs, which will hopefully be addressed. So, loot being lost to decay. Sometimes what can happen is if you're running the Memory Nexus and you pick up an item and your inventory is full, it flips and then it gets eaten by decay. I've also had what feels like something drops in a decay pit and then you just lose it. And you're like, oh, well, guess I didn't want that then. Stuff will trigger on my filter while I'm running the Nexus. And it doesn't matter how hard I look, you can't get the item. And that's something which will hopefully be addressed at some point. Next up, essence and fossil crafting fractured items. This is one of the biggest bugs, and this is honestly the thing which kind of, depending on how long this goes on for, impacts synthesis crafting the most. So, as I said at the start, to make a lot of the best tier 1 synthesized stuff, you need to actually use fossils and essences on fractured items. This is currently disabled and was disabled from launch due to a bug, and it hasn't been enabled yet. It just kind of sucks that one of the big selling features of the league, the super tier 1 uniques, we won't have access to until this is fixed, and we don't know when this will be fixed. Hopefully they'll be fixed sooner than later, but if you're wondering why you're not seeing certain synthesized mods popping up, it's because we can't actually craft it yet. Like, it's actually impossible to craft until this is implemented into the game. The crashes. Crashes suck. No one likes crashes. Hopefully the crashes will improve. Portal bugs. So this is something where when you're doing a super long run, you want to be picking up loot in all the zones. You can teleport if you talk to the stabilizer. You can click the middle and you can teleport back to the start to use your stash. However, sometimes the portal then portals you somewhere else, or the portal doesn't work. And so I never use the portal, so I do everything with just one inventory. So I just have to micromanage everything, and that sucks. We want to be able to go backwards and forwards. It's something they'll fix when they fix it, but until then, yeah, it kind of sucks. And then reward nodes currently can spawn, which break the map completely. So an example of that would be here. So a boss spawned, and then 2 random reward structures spawned, locking into it. So now this entire area is broken. You can't access the boss, and you can't access these 2 nodes. So now this guy just has a chunk of his Memory Nexus map inaccessible. Obviously, this is something they'll fix with time, but it sucks in the meantime. So to TLDR, personally, I really enjoy the league. I really like the league. Does the league have flaws? Yes. Every league has flaws at launch. Is it the end of the world? No. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm Tarke. If you do have really big feedback, if you do want to kind of present your ideas, maybe try doing it in a somewhat structured manner if you want GGG to actually listen to it. If you just, like, complain and set everything on fire and tell people to, like, quit their jobs and that they don't know what they're doing and blah, 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 they're less likely to listen. Developers are people. People are people. Don't be a dickhead, basically. Anyway, I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.